All of you have spoken so eloquently. So all of you have spoken so eloquently about the center and Professor Panikkar, and most of you have also taught me when I was a student here that I only can begin by saying how proud I am that I have been a student of the Center for Historical Studies. And I speak today as a student of Professor Panikkar, who joined the Center for Historical Studies in 1988. CHS, of course, when I joined, was a huge name. It was a place of tall intellectuals, the bigwigs of history, who were literally recrafting a discipline, bringing newer ways of thinking and writing about history. It was a place where many actually historians from Calcutta University, and I belong to Calcutta, of course, those who had taught me were, in a sense, seeing CHS as a kind of threat, if I can say that. This was a place where history was taught differently, courses were structured differently. There were courses which crossed specializations, where the tutorial system was an integral part of the evaluation process. And I must confess that when I joined the center, I too was full of awe and wondered how to manage here. And as we walked somewhat awkwardly through what has been later referred to as the corridors of power, Professor Panikkar was one of those who was again such a tall figure. He was the chairperson, and therefore perhaps for many of us he appeared to be sterner than he was. But what I remember that behind this sternness was a very gentle person, and I echo in the verse words, with a twinkling, with a twinkle in his eyes and a smile hovering around his lips. For the first time, we came to know that an entire course could be structured on just a history of ideas. It was broken down for us, and it was absolutely fascinating. And yet when Professor Panikkar was making such an important intervention and shaping our way of thinking, he never abrasively put forward the points. It was a persuasive way of teaching. It was always very gently delivered. And if we would question what he would say, and he always encouraged that, he would very gently tell us, "But don't you think?" That was the way Professor Panikkar would teach us. But I remember most clearly the tutorial discussion. We did not have to write 16 tutorials. We wrote 8, but we struggled with that as well, to be honest. But I remember that when we had the first tutorial discussion at CHS and we had to write a book review, some of us were apprehensive, some of us were terrified. And yet, Professor Panikkar was so gentle as he smiled and told us that his intervention would be minimal. It was we who were to make the presentations, we were to raise the questions, we were to learn how to question and reflect, not just through our own writings, but actually through questioning the others. This was an integral part of our learning process. And Professor Panikkar's tutorials continue to structure the way that I conduct the tutorials for my courses. So I begin with a book review. I tell the students that my intervention will be minimal. I expect the students to actually ask questions, and it is in a way a legacy of what I have learned which continues, and we try and emulate the way Professor Panikkar had actually taught us. I will end with my experience as a student of the seminar course which he had offered. So I did a seminar course with Professor Panikkar, and we met regularly. He taught us how to read our sources, engage with secondary literature, and so on. But what I will particularly remember is what he told me as he discussed with me my final grade. I was very happy. But he told me gently and yet very firmly that it was not the final submission that had got me the grade. It was actually the way that the entire seminar discussions were held. What we learned, therefore, is CHS has taught us not just how to write an assessment, how to write a seminar paper. What we learned at CHS was actually how to think, how to reflect on issues, how to question, how to engage with the archive and historiographical debates, and how to creatively think about how we should engage with both the past and the present. I will always be grateful to Professor Panikkar for having taught me all of this. Thank you very much.